Carp can be prepared in countless ways, resulting in a wide variety of delicious dishes. However, if you were to visit the United States, you'd notice carp is conspicuously absent from the dinner table. In fact, it's often looked down upon. Why is this the case? Is it simply that Americans don't know how to cook carp well, or is there a more complex story behind it? First, let's consider culinary culture. In Vietnam, carp is a familiar sight on the dinner table and even carries deep cultural significance. The legend of the carp transforming into a dragon, the carp leaping over the dragon gate. This fish is not only tasty, but also symbolizes good luck and prosperity. During the Lunar New Year, many families release carp into the water to send the kitchen gods back to heaven. But in the United States, carp has a completely different fate. To be clear, when people talk about carp in the US, they're usually referring to Asian carp, which includes four main types: silver carp, bighead carp, grass carp, and black carp. These carp were initially introduced to the US with good intentions, to help clean fish ponds and control algae and weeds without the need for chemicals. But life doesn't always go as planned. After floods, carp escaped and began to multiply rapidly in rivers, particularly the Mississippi River and its tributaries. Consequently, they became a major threat to the American ecosystem. Why don't Americans eat carp? In Vietnam, we're accustomed to meticulously removing bones or cooking carp in a way that softens the bones, such as long braising. However, American food culture emphasizes convenience. Americans prefer fish that can be filleted, quickly grilled, or fried without worrying about bones. They tend to favor fish that are low in bones, easy to prepare, and have a mild flavor. Examples include salmon, cod, and tuna. Even catfish, which isn't always very popular in Vietnam, is quite well liked in the US. These types of fish dominate restaurant menus and supermarket displays in America. So, catfish, which is less commonly eaten in Vietnam, is exported to the US at high prices. Carp, on the other hand, is considered a trash fish. Americans often describe carp as being bony and having a muddy taste. If you've ever eaten carp, you know that if it isn't prepared properly, it can indeed be a bit fishy and requires specific cooking techniques and seasonings to mask that flavor. In Vietnam, we're used to soaking carp in ginger or alcohol, or braising it for a long time in fish sauce to eliminate the fishiness. But in the US, most consumers don't want to go through that much trouble or don't know how. They prefer quick, convenient meals, and carp is clearly not on that list. Furthermore, American cuisine is heavily influenced by European cultures, particularly British, French, and Italian. While carp is still a common dish in Eastern Europe, such as Poland and Ukraine, especially during holidays, it's not as popular in Western Europe. When Europeans migrated to the US, they brought their eating habits with them, and the majority of these immigrants were from Western Europe, where carp wasn't a favored choice. As a result, it has been largely forgotten in American food culture. In addition, the carp market in the US is practically non-existent. In major supermarkets like Walmart or Costco, you'll find salmon and cod displayed everywhere, but carp is very scarce. The American seafood industry focuses on commercially valuable species that are easy to sell and export, and carp, with all its drawbacks, can't compete in the American market. So, Americans find the idea of eating carp very strange. Now, let's move on to another important reason why carp is stigmatized in the United States. It's considered an invasive species. This is no joke. Carp in the US, especially Asian carp, are seen as a major environmental enemy. Let's rewind to the 19th century. Carp were brought to the US from Europe and Asia as a food source and to be raised on farms. At the time, people thought carp were a great idea because they were easy to raise, grew quickly, and could survive in harsh environments. However, some carp escaped from farms or were intentionally released, and they began to thrive in American rivers and lakes, especially in the Mississippi River Basin and the Great Lakes region. But why are they so disliked? Because they cause a lot of damage. Asian carp eat a lot. They can consume up to 1/5 of their body weight each day. They devour algae and aquatic plants, and they compete with native fish for food. As a result, the American ecosystem is disrupted. Many native fish species are declining in number, and water quality is getting worse because carp stir up the mud at the bottom of rivers, making the water murky. Moreover, Asian carp have a special ability that makes them a nightmare. They can jump out of the water. If you watch videos, you'll see scenes of carp weighing dozens of pounds leaping wildly when boats pass by. Some people have even been hit in the face by jumping carp, suffering broken noses, or even falling into the water. It sounds funny, but it's a serious problem. As a result, carp have gained a bad reputation and are labeled as a harmful species. Americans don't want to eat a fish that they see as an enemy of the environment. Instead, they eat cleaner fish that are raised on farms or caught in the ocean. In fact, the United States spends a lot of money every year just to eradicate carp. The US has spent billions of dollars over the years to deal with Asian carp. To give you an idea, in 2024, a group called the Coordinating Committee, an organization dedicated to dealing with invasive species, spent nearly $50 million on 45 projects to prevent carp from reaching the Great Lakes. But this is just one part of the program. There are even larger projects, such as building high-tech barriers to block carp, costing up to $1.2 billion and still not finished. Or, more than a decade ago, in 2010, the US government spent $78 million and even appointed someone jokingly called the Carp Czar to lead a campaign against carp. To date, the United States has spent over $7 billion to manage invasive fish species, with carp accounting for the majority. This is a staggering figure, larger than the defense budget of many countries. What has the US done with all that money? They've tried everything from simple to modern methods. For example, they've built underwater electric fences. These fences are placed in canals to deliver a mild electric shock that deters fish from swimming through. This method has been used for decades, but sometimes carp still manage to get through. They've also tried using sound, bubbles, and light to drive the fish away. For example, in the US, there's a dam called Blay. At this dam, they installed a system that emits noise and bubbles, costing $7 million to scare carp and keep them away. The US also organizes mass fishing competitions. They use large boats, big nets, and even electrical devices to catch thousands of carp. Scientists are even studying special toxins that only kill carp without harming other fish. They're using gene editing technology to ensure that the fish only produce male offspring, making them unable to reproduce. The Americans have really tried a lot of different approaches. In Vietnam, the story is much simpler. Another reason why Americans don't like to eat carp is psychological. Aside from the taste or how it's raised, in the US, carp is associated with being a cheap fish and a fish for the poor. Historically, carp was eaten by certain communities, especially immigrants from Eastern Europe and Asia. But as the American economy developed, people began to switch to more premium foods, and carp was left behind. At this point, you might think that Americans hate carp completely and that everyone dislikes it, but that's not entirely true. Some communities in the US still love carp, and this is where the story gets interesting. Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean, and Eastern European people in the US still eat carp regularly. If you go to Asian markets in California, you'll find fresh live carp for sale, ready to be cooked in sour soup, braised, or prepared in other ways, such as with tomatoes and dill. In the Polish or Ukrainian families, carp is also a common dish for dinner, often cooked in soup or fried. Recently, some American chefs and environmental activists have been trying to change the perception of carp. Because there are too many Asian carp, which are harmful to the environment, they encourage people to eat carp to reduce their numbers. Some restaurants have created dishes like carp tacos, carp burgers, or even carp sausage. All of these dishes sound very strange to Vietnamese people because they lack the spices that we use to cook carp. In some states, they even organize carp fishing or carp shooting competitions with bows and arrows. Yes, you heard that right. The carp that are caught are usually not eaten, but are used as fertilizer or animal feed. But this shows that carp still have a certain role in American life, even if it's not on the dinner table. To understand this better, let's compare it to Vietnam. In Vietnam, carp is not only a food, but also a part of our culture. We have a wide variety of ways to prepare it, from rustic to elaborate. Carp are raised in ponds, carefully cared for and sold fresh at the market. Vietnamese people don't mind removing bones or dealing with the fishy smell because it's part of the art of Vietnamese cooking, part of the Vietnamese flavor, and part of the fresh herbs that perhaps only Vietnam has. In addition, carp in Vietnam are not considered an invasive species. They are raised in a controlled environment and don't harm the ecosystem. The price of carp is also reasonable, affordable for most people. In contrast, in the US, carp is stigmatized for environmental and cultural reasons, as I've mentioned. So, can carp become a popular food in the US in the future? Perhaps we need the Vietnamese palate to show Americans how to eat carp properly. Thanks for paying attention to this story. If you found it interesting, please click the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share it. And now I'd like to say goodbye.